it's like inevitable. Okay. You're going to have conflict and disagreements with the person that you are parenting your children with. It's just, it's inevitable.
That's right. Yes.
It's very human is what I like to think of it. Like you can't have perfect communication and you're going to think differently about parenting styles and how you want to do certain things. And
it's about your kids. I think there's very few things in life any of us care more about and want to be intentional with than our children. So the stakes are really high and it matters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Love. Today, we are going to be talking to our guests, Stephen and Erin Mitchell, about love, about parenting, and the challenges around how hard it can be to stay really connected while you are parenting. Thank you for joining us, Erin and Stephen.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thanks a lot for having us.
Excited to be here.
I've been spending the week reading your book, Too Tired to Fight, and remembering a lot of what I went through with my partners at the time, co-parenting, and a lot resonated. I really enjoyed your book, and I thought it was full of wisdom and ways to navigate what you call essential conflicts.
Yes,
right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for reading it. Yeah,
I read it, and glad you.
I read all the books, but some are like, how much am I really taking away from this? And your book, like for people that are parenting, I think this is an excellent book. We talk about co-parenting when people get divorced because that's another thing all in itself. But I think it's like inevitable. Okay, you're going to have conflict and disagreements with the person that you are parenting your children with. It's just it's inevitable.
That's right. Yes,
it's very human is what I like to think of it. Like you can't have perfect communication and you're going to think differently about parenting styles and how you want to do certain things. And
and it's about your kids. I think there's very few things in life any of us care more about and want to be intentional with than our children. So the stakes are really high and it matters.
Of course it does. So tell us about your background and why you wrote your book.
So we are a married couple and we have 3 kids of our own, 13, soon to be 11 and 7. And I have a PhD in medical family therapy. Erin has a master's in counseling psychology. And we thought that we were going to be phenomenal when it came to being
because you're both therapists. You're both you got the schooling.
we like it was just going to be pretty easy. And then we had kids and we didn't do so well.
Yeah, it was a struggle. I think and I think that's what we really want to normalize. It's going to be a struggle. New things are stirred. Things that had been resolved are opened right back up again. And so while we were struggling, we were like, we were still able to talk about it. But like, if we're struggling, this must be really hard.
Because we shouldn't. I mean, on paper, we shouldn't be struggling.
About all of these things, we'd prepared for this. We'd done a lot of work around this, and it was really tough. And out of that, I think was born mostly first our company. Like couples need help with this, and we were really not able to find the specific help we were looking for. With like the examples that apply to us, because of course we know that we should be communicating more. Well, I'm tired. So what?
I'm completely exhausted.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the name of your book, Too Tired to Fight. It's just like, I can't even deal. I'm going to bed. I don't even right?
Yes.
Too tired. Yes. Have more intentional time for yourself. Fantastic. When exactly you prescribe that. So it became very obvious, like, oh, we could do this. And we had always wanted to work together and we'd always been dreaming, but, life happened. But it did create our company.
So we created a company, Couples Counseling for Parents. And I think our thought as well was we wanted to provide like research-informed, psychologically sound education for parents. Because a lot of times, like when couples, like they would come to us or whatever, they'd be like, oh, we don't need like deep psychotherapy. So I'm a licensed therapist. Erin has worked as a therapist before as well.
What he's not saying is I am not currently licensed.
He's not currently licensed, right? But like they would come and be like, well, we don't need we don't need therapy. We're not like,
Right.
we're not
That's
messed up,
That's
right?
us.
And so
Yeah.
we really wanted to bridge that gap between like, these are skills that you can learn.
Mhm.
This is communication. This is being more connected. This is learning how to cope with a really huge transition in your the developmental stage of your relationship that is parenting. And we really liked that idea as well of just, this isn't, you don't have to be scared of this. You don't have to think that you've got some huge, massive problem. This is just parents learning with people who are other parents, and we're using our educations and those things as well, but learning how to go through this process together, trying to really humanize it, make it normal, but also provide really solid relational content as well. So we were like, let's do it.
Yeah.
But
And
that's how
I
we
think you nailed it, Stephen. When you have like normalizing how incredibly hard it is to parent. Like number one, parenting is very challenging.
Yes.
And like I've got 3 different ages, and it's just like even during the stages, like they say like a baby's easier than a teenager. I mean, come on, I don't think so. But there's like, I mean, maybe your time is less, like draining, but there's challenges along the whole continuum.
Yes.
And when you do have a baby, let's just say it's like understanding and just normalizing the fact that your life is going to be turned upside down, and of course your coupledom has completely changed.
Yes.
And
Correct.
so I don't, and I like you said, it's like you're both trained, therapists, and you know the schooling, and you're thinking we're good, we're solid. That's not going to happen to us. We've got this, but you don't actually expect like that. Actually, it's human nature that everything's going to frickin' flip upside down when you bring a human home, another human into your life.
That's exactly right. And so, yes, we want to normalize that. I think the other thing, I love that you said that each stage is different, because we hear all the time that couples come to us and say, like, we just thought we had to get through, like babydom. Like, if we could just get through that, then we'll be fine. But these things come with us and they just transform. So maybe we're talking about diapers initially, but like diapers is just the vehicle for the vacation break that we're having. And that will easily become preschools, which will easily become stress response to our middle schooler, which easily become
adolescence. And what do we do about screen time and phones?
It's just you, because you always I mean, it changes right along with us unless we really get to the roots of these problems.
Yeah. So there was I had quite a few aha moments when I was reading your book, which was so great. Like, first of all, I like your definition. So it's of stress, because you talk about like parenting is stressful, and it's naturally going to bring up stress. But I think in our society we view stress like in the wrong way, right? You're just saying, like, your definition of stress. Stress simply is the heightened energy that comes with going from something that is routine, expected, and practiced to something new. And I was like, yeah. Like, it's just like, it kind of takes the negativity out of it and being like, okay, the reason I'm feeling this heightened sense of everything physically in my nervous system, and my mind is like ruminating or whatever you're going through, it's like, this is normal. Like, stress is normal. So that's what do you want to say about that before we get into my next aha?
well, I think again, it is to shift our mindset and our perspective on
it's shifting your mindset.
Because it is simply, I think, a normative, as you were saying, a normative, like, nervous system response when we're used to something being one way and then it changes. And stress can be as simple as getting to work. I was at home, asleep, calm, and fine, and all of a sudden I got to get up and get going. Oh, okay, yeah, like we're going to have a response to that heightened energy. It can be as simple as that, and it can also be as profound as, oh my goodness, I'm a father now. Oh, I didn't have the best example of what it meant to be a father, and I've got to do something I don't really think I know how to do. And then that kind of stress is like that sort of deep internal kind of stress that hangs around and can kind of impact your confidence and impact how you interact with your partner, and then how you interact with your kid. And like, you need to understand that as well. And that's not positive or negative. That's just what's happening for you. So I think that it really helps you shift your mindset in terms of how you think about, quote unquote, the problem of stress.
I think I love that. I also love that the profound place that can invite us to, because I think so often, especially as we transition into parenthood, we just move through these stresses without really letting them register. One, again, and I mean no shame, we don't always have time. Like truly, we do have to continue moving through, but we at some point need to start flagging like something seems important. It's just something to notice and pay attention to. And that's the practice we really want to help first an individual start recognizing, because that is the beginning of healthy communication. And that is the beginning of real authentic connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So you talk about attachment. Okay. So we like on Let's Talk Love and in Real Love Ready with so many of our experts, we talk about attachment, right? And are you anxious attachment? Are you avoidant?
Right.
Are you one of the two? Right. But that's not where you're going with this. And I think the way that you talk about attachment in your book is so awesome, because you're saying, which makes sense to me, like you're a couple, like you talked about, you guys were good, you're strong. And then you have babies and you're just like, what the heck, right? We're going through it. But you know, it's your attachment as a couple is almost displaced when it can't be. Of course, it becomes displaced when you've got children, because now it's like you've got this little one that's completely 100% dependent on you and for their attachment needs. And it's only natural that you as their parent are going to attach to them, and somehow almost like you're not doing it on purpose, but you're detaching from your partner. It's like this attachment need or is way more in your life than your partner. That you're good, like you're an adult here. Right. I'm taking care of this thing. Like that just. But however, so I think that to me was like such a big learning, because it makes perfect sense that your partner, like if you don't have that strong attachment and if you're not focusing on your attachment with your partner, it's going to come at a cost, right? Sure. And your relationship. So that to me was like, holy crap, like you naturally have an attachment need with your partner. And then your behaviors are demonstrating that, that loss of attachment, that feeling, those feelings.
Yeah. And I think it also awakens attachment, our attachment histories, our attachment hopes, our attachment fears, because, you know, like we talk about in the book, like a lot of times from an attachment standpoint, parents want to either recreate or correct their attachment experience. So when they have kids, so like, oh, I've got these beautiful, lovely, wonderful human beings in my life now, and I want to give them an attachment experience exactly like what I had or completely different than what I had. And then different partners might have different viewpoints on what that looks like, because one partner might be like, well, I didn't really love the attachment experience you had as a kid and how it impacted you. I don't think we should be recreating that.
Sure.
Or, oh, you know what? There's so much pressure to recreate exactly what you had. Like we can't do that. And so attachment just becomes so prevalent in terms of, yes, you're attaching to these little kids. It does impact your attachment with your partner in a big way. But then also it stirs up your own kind of attachment needs and feelings as it comes to like parenting and how you want to express those things. Then throw in a little conflict in there, and those can feel like further broken attachment between partners.
I think all I was going to say is, but everything you just said was so linear.
Right.
But in real time, that's like all in a blender, and it's all happening all the time. And of course, I want you to attach to our kids. Of course, I don't want that to cost me. Of course, I see that it should cost me. Of course, it shouldn't cost me, all the time. And it's complicated. It's really hard to
disentangle all that stuff.
Especially in real time. That's, well, it's not hard. That's impossible.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, what we've found, most couples struggle to do that in real time. And we hear couples coming to us, maybe a year to 3 years after they're having their first kid. And they're like, we kind of feel like we're just now catching up with ourselves. And we're just catching up with what happened to us. And there's like, oh man, like we didn't know our relationship was here, but it is here, and we don't know how to like reclaim it in a sense.
Right.
So you have, and so I listened to the audiobook, and we also have the copy to read.
Yep.
And I liked the audiobook because you have different people reading, like being the characters, right? And so that was a really nice way to listen to your book. So for those that do Audible or whatever, I thought that was really spot on.
Yeah.
For just getting there with the people. So you do have skills, right? So talk to us about your formula that you created. And I think, what you're saying before, Stephen, is just around like, it is about when you don't have time, but you do have to create the space. Like, and when you can take a step back and be more intentional with this in the conflict. Right. One of the things that before we go through your formula, one of the things that I think I was just reminded over and over again, Terry Real talks about this too. It's not you against me, it's us, right? Our conflict, what we are dealing with in our relationship, it's an us problem. And I think with parenting, it's so easy and often that we like, it's me against you. And I want you to like bend to what I'm like, where I'm coming from and, or vice versa, right? Rather than like, how can we meet in the middle or find something where we're both going to feel it's a win-win? So that's where I think your solutions to conflict really, you've got some really good ones on how to come in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. So, I mean, I think our big, kind of thing is conflict is really an opportunity to connect. And so we have this conflict to connection equation. Oftentimes people think, conflict means there's something wrong and that creates disconnection. And we're thinking, well, it most absolutely it can. But if we have the skills to engage in conflict can lead to connection, and we can get through as partners in terms of having difficult conversations and be like, actually, wow, that was tough, but like, it's me and it's us. We're together. Wow, like we just navigated that really tough conversation, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think the thing is that because even the word conflict, we're all talking about it like we all assume it's something bad. All of us. We've done a lot of book promotion, right? Like we've talked about this a bunch. It's nearly universal, but it really is just supposed to mean something's important. But
the reason I want to talk to you about this, the reason I'm feeling this way is because like I'm not feeling connected, right? I'm not feeling heard. These are very important human needs, and we need to sort through it.
Exactly.
So that we can stay connected.
Exactly. If we can even just start to identify like, I'm just wanting Stephen to know something about me. Well, one, like if I say it like that, of course I want to share that with him because I know Stephen wants to know something about me. But what? Like that, and that's the difficult thing because this is happening in real time. And like we said, it's a blender of emotions and experiences, and it's fast and it's hard to say, Stephen, there's something really personal about me I'd like for you to identify in this moment. And I'm very aware of what it is. And I know that you have the space and capacity in this moment to hear me. That's hard. And it is a big ask. We will be very clear, or maybe not a big ask. It is an ask up front to do this.
But and so I think the conflict to connection equation, there are two parts to it in terms of there's intentional expressing and there's intentional listening. There's always someone talking and someone listening in a conversation. And to your point, Erin, a lot of times people will read through the dialogue and the scripts that we have in the chapters, and they're like, nobody talks to each other this way. Like there's no couple who talks this way. And oftentimes my response is like, you're exactly right. But it is a skill that can be learned.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like there is a skill to doing this, and it does take work up front. But once you become practiced in it, it just becomes the way that you and your partner talk. And it can really shift the dynamic and communication between you and your partner very quickly. And they're not skills that like take forever to learn. I think they can be learned pretty quickly. But we do say like these are skills to learn: intentional expressing, intentional listening. And then we kind of break it down. Like a lot of times we talk about it in terms of it's like a neuro-narrative kind of approach. The neuro part being you have to engage your nervous system and you have to tell a story. Think about it like everybody likes a good story, right? Like I like to listen to a story. And if we look at conflict as I'm trying to tell my partner the story of my experience, it changes it. Rather than I'm trying to criticize them, I'm trying to blame them, I'm trying to tell them how they're letting me down. No, I'm trying to tell you the story of my experience. I want you to listen to it. And I want you to tell me the story of yours. And so that's kind of the overall
It makes
framework.
it overall quite simple. Like, it's not easy to do. That doesn't
Right.
But it's like, this is the story that I'm telling myself right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is how I'm feeling. This is my experience.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason that it's a little bit complicated is because we have to know those places. Because those places, whatever story we're telling ourselves, didn't start today. That's a deeply rooted story. It means something to me. It has history. It was true. Like, whatever that thing
Right.
is, like an example would be, I don't know, Stephen running. When we had our oldest, one of these things too, when we get home from work, I was staying at home at the time, and I'm, for the sake of story, I'm gonna just, make it seem like this happened all the time. But Stephen would get home from work, he'd like make sure everything was like set up or like, reset or whatever, and be like, I'm gonna take a quick run. It looks like, our kid's name is Leeds. Leeds is asleep or whatever. And I would watch him walk to go with those shoes, and my spine would straighten, the hairs like raising. And
I can see it, Erin, because I'm going like, I can see the visual. It's like, you've been gone all day, bud. I've been here.
Right.
Oh, do you
And
need a
now
little
you're
time
going to go for a
yourself?
run? I don't think so.
So that's exactly right. So, and all I could think to say was what I just said. Oh, Stephen, do you need a little time for yourself? Or like, I don't
know.
think, And so then he's like, wait, you don't want me to run? I'm a better person. I'll come home. I'll be engaged. Like, I'll be like less stressed. Like, you don't want me to take care of myself. And I'm like, you're right, Stephen, because I don't like it, and it just,
Or
just
like,
word spiral.
you totally don't appreciate. I've been at work all day, and it's not like
Right.
I'm
I know.
like
So both
hanging out on
stories.
vacation.
Yeah.
Right. So
then-
are you good at, can we walk through that example?
Yeah. So
Of
we'll walk through it.
intentional expressing and listening, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So kind of that's the setup, and that the idea is from the intentional expressing standpoint. So Erin, who looks at me grabbing the shoes, she has something she wants to say, but she first has to engage with something's happening, right?
Mhm.
Because her comment of like, oh, you need a little me time, like that is not an invitation to conversation.
No,
that is an
it's passive
invitation for fight,
aggression.
right?
It's
Totally.
like, yeah.
So Erin kind of like what would happen for her is she would just, first of all, just assess and recognize, something is happening. And usually she might feel that in her body, right? She might get hot. She might,
Well, like
start shaking. She's
so
like,
my
spine.
my hair, I'm
Like-
like, oh, my feet.
Okay.
I do this. I don't know. People can't see, but like I straighten my fingers, and that's truly my response.
Yeah.
Like that's what I like.
So nervous system is
Right.
engaged, right? That's
Yeah.
that. And then, so
Yeah.
she's like, she assesses that. Then she's got to attune to like, what is the emotional content behind there? She said, I'm pretty angry. like I feel pretty upset. Okay. But then there, as she was saying, there's always a story to the emotion. There's always a history to our emotion. And so, yes, she's angry, but she's angry about a story that she feels is happening, which is,
Okay, so how this would come out, and probably how it did come out. These are probably not on purpose, but direct quotes. But I think that people think they're being very clear communicators when we say things like, "That's so selfish. You're being so selfish. Like how could you be so selfish?" Or "That's so entitled." Because if I'm being honest, I think those things are true. I think that is a selfish action, and I think it is entitled, and so that's what I think to say. And I'm like, I'm clearly communicating.
Okay.
So far, I've said nothing about myself. So for me to walk away and feel like Stephen really understands me, I wouldn't, because he may
I'd be like, well, I'm not selfish. I'm not entitled, like holistically, right? Like that doesn't connect. But Erin's anger is telling a story.
So the next thing is like, okay, so selfish and entitled. Do I know anyone in my life where I felt like they were selfish and entitled and taking advantage of me? Oh boy. Yeah, I can find the thread there. I definitely have that experience. I could list a lot of stories like right now, real time. And thankfully, Stephen and I had already done a lot of that work. A lot of times couples haven't, and that's okay. Like it's never too late to start this. But to say like, hey, I actually have an idea of what's happening. I'm I'm feeling taken advantage of. I'm feeling like, and it's reminding me of, and it's really helpful to take this back to, and for me, it would be my dad. My dad would I'd have plans with my friends for the weekend, or like there was a time where I was in a talent show and he was like, that's inconvenient for me. You can't go. But he didn't tell me until that day. Like, I'm letting my friends down. Like, whatever, all these things. But like, for me to be like, this is the feeling. Like, you're not even considering my needs. You're just jumping to yours.
And so that's reflecting on what the emotion, how it's connected to the story. And then what Erin is talking about is sharing that story. And if you notice, like, there's not a sense of blame or criticism. There's this moment is tapping into an experience that I've had, and this is what's happening for me.
Yes, right. I'm feeling like when I hear Erin speak like that, I'm feeling like compassion for you. And like, that really sucks. Like, that is so shitty that, and I can, and you just want to go there with you. Like,
totally. Right. And that's the, almost always the natural response from a partner, like, whoa, like, this is that.
And so I think that, again, if that's intentional express. Do you hear the level of intention that Erin would have to be able to express this to me? Yes, that's a skill that you can learn. But it does take effort to have difficult conversations or engage in conflict. Takes some work. So yeah.
So what about this? Because I'm thinking, like, what if somebody doesn't have a story that they can, like, in that moment, like, you see this guy, you see Steven, he's putting his shoes on, he's rocking out the door, and you're like, right? This is how I'm feeling in my body. Like, okay, like, I'm feeling taken advantage of right now. Yeah. What if the story was more like present? I'm feeling like I've been at home all day. I'm very tired, and then you're putting the ask out, but that's not the step, right? Are we going into intentional listening first? Like, how do we walk through this?
Because that's the reality. Because Robin, everything you're saying is real. Because I'm not actually in this moment where Steven has grabbed his tennis shoes. I'm not actually mad at my dad. I'm actually frustrated and hurt by Steven. Right. It's just a rooted place, and I think that's the reason it's important and more helpful to know that is because that's the place I'm looking to be like, we don't have that, right? Like, so you're not going to ask me to put my needs aside, right? Like, you see how doing this is a repetition of a really hurt place in my story.
Oh, yes.
Right? Because if not, then there will be no repair. Because Steven could easily be like, okay, fine, I won't run. But that doesn't actually repair the feeling of, but you would have. You would have come home and thought it was completely acceptable to grab your running shoes and go for a run without even checking in. Like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? What do you need? I'm here to check in. Like, the dynamic with just a changed behavior doesn't change. It doesn't repair or create that connection. But even if you can't connect it to a story in that moment, the real time does work. I'm feeling taken advantage of. I'm feeling like you're prioritizing your needs and not even wondering about mine. Like, how do we get this back into balance?
And this is where that intentional listen. So there's this part of any storytelling, right? Somebody tells a story, and then there's someone who bears witness to the story. Who like, think about it, like your kids come up to you and they're like, hey, look at what I drew, or hey, look at what I was reading. Like, they bring you whatever it is, and they tell you the story about it because they want you to bear witness to that story. They want you to lean in and have wide eyes and be like, oh, that's important. And then ask questions. Yes. Tell me some more about it. And so that intentional listening place is that place of bearing witness. And so it kind of goes like this. So Erin says, oh, so you need a little you time, huh? And I listen to that. And what I have to do is I have to do the same thing. I have to assess, whoa, I didn't like, my body tensed. I didn't like, I'm feeling frustrated now.
Defensive.
And I have to, defensive, exactly. I have to realize that is happening. And then the step for me is one of the toughest steps, but I have to suspend my defensiveness. Yes. I have to say, wait a second. Now, I could get into it with Erin. I could, say like, well, what are you talking about? Well, that was kind of
tell you about my day.
A snarky way to say something to me. What do you, Or I could suspend my defensiveness and then clue into my partner's story, because maybe she doesn't start perfectly.
No, let's
right?
just assume that I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, and I don't. And I do say,
she says that,
oh, Stephen needs a little me time.
And I can be like, hey, what's going on? And then that can be the opportunity, the invitation for Erin to tell me that story. And that's a story that I can listen to and I can believe. I can bear witness to it. And then if there is something to repair, it would be something like, oh, well, I get how this, that's not my intention at all. But I understand that me getting my running shoes and taking off, I get how it gets into that story.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm sorry for that. I don't need to run. Or we can say, or she can be like, no, I appreciate you. That's great. It's fine. We've been able to work through whatever it is that is happening. But I think that listening part allows the story to be heard, and it allows me to repair, because a lot of people are like, well, that's not what you meant to do. You didn't mean to tap into that story. Well, also, so what?
Running of itself, the reason
right.
I think that these kinds of examples are so important, running is good. I do objectively acknowledge that Stephen running is better for our marriage. Of course I want that. And that would be his response over and over, I don't understand. So you don't want me to run? And I'm like, no, of course I want you to run. Well, it feels like you don't. I don't understand. And so we're going to fight. And that's where that conflict feels cyclical, and we're banging our heads against that brick wall.
Which I think is just so common, is the cyclical arguments. You're fighting about the same things
over and over and getting
nowhere. But what you're teaching is going, it's this is why the active, the intentional expressing is so important.
Yes.
Getting to this is the root of it. The root is that's where the heart to heart.
Exactly. This is repair. That's
if you're able to actually identify that, which I think people would have a hard time doing. Some people would be like, I don't know what this feeling is that I'm feeling, but I'm pissed. But okay, what's underneath that? What's underneath that?
I think that's exactly right. That's our first thing when people who really don't know, and this is new, understanding your story and how impact, because a lot of, I told a pretty nasty story about my dad, but otherwise, I had a lot of wonderful things happen in my childhood. It's not I would be well, it makes sense because my childhood was terrible and everything traumatic. No. But there are some things that I don't want repeated in this relationship. And when I even put a little a feeler out for wait a minute, full stop breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what conflict is representing. We don't want those places in this family.
And Robin, like you said, not there's people who would have a hard time with it. You know what? I think that everyone has a hard time with it.
Yes.
That's the skill building, right? And honestly, that's why we exist in the world. We're this is what we want to help you as a couple do, to learn these skills, to know those stories, because then this is the beautiful thing that happens. Erin and I have that conversation.
Yeah, I said it nasty. You were like, whoa, something's important. There is a piece to this I'm missing. And I'm
and now I have a marker.
I gotta think.
I have a marker in my mind of, oh, Erin has a story. She has an experience where when she feels that she is being taken advantage of, she has a strong response to it, which is understandable. Which, you know what? Next time I do something, let's say next time I go and pick up my shoe, because I forget and I don't remember, and I come home, say, hey, I'm going to run. I go and grab my shoes. And she's like, really? I go, oh, this is
running shoes. Shoes.
This is the thing. I'm totally being entitled and say you know what? I get it. Yeah. My bad. I forgot. And now you kind of have a theme.
Yeah.
You have these signposts in your relationship that actually allow you to have 3-second conversations that repair, as opposed to 30-minute, hour-long conversations.
Right. Example. And I think, so that, I think of Laura Berman. Dr. Laura Berman talks about, in her book, about it's like a little cactus, a little, if you think about a cactus with spikes.
Yeah.
And it's hopefully we're not all walking around with a million spikes on our bodies.
Right,
we might have, I don't know, 10, or maybe more. But it's like when you know that spike in your partner, it's like an ouch. Like,
Yes.
that was an ouch that I just touched on my partner. That this is bringing up an ouch for them, and that awareness alone is like, and then the compassion around that, and also you tread lightly around that, and you be aware of it, because that's a loving act. It's like, I know that, and it's not like that your partner needs to get rid of it. No, that's not it, because that's not the solution. It's recognizing where the ouch is and being like, okay, like I know that about my partner. That's a trigger or a little spike that okay. So
I think that's an excellent way of saying it.
And in the book we say, like, conflict can be attachment breaking interactions, or they can be attachment making interactions. And that's where you can begin to just stack up all of these attachment making interactions and memories that connect you and help you feel close and connected, as opposed to stacking up all of these attachment breaking interactions that just result in resentment. And then you've got miles and miles of resentment built up towards each other. So I think it is like how it shifts the ethos and feeling and culture of your relationship through conflict.
Yeah.
Which
and
most
so,
people are like, huh?
Yeah. So you've got, in your book, you've got 13 very common conflicts that couples go through. And I read through them like, oh yeah, that one totally. That one, yeah. Like there was a couple that didn't resonate, but I think that's just not, it's not like you're going to have all 13.
Right.
But like, for instance, like, I'm just going to name a couple of them, and people just have to listen and read your book, because I just think I love the examples and the narrative too. Like if you listen, I think you're really it really hits home. Yeah. So I'm all touched out. Yeah. That's that is such a common one, especially when you've got little ones, like a baby or like little kids that you are constantly holding, touching, like if as a woman, you breastfeeding, and your partner is feeling like, well, now you don't want and you, of course, we don't have a sex life, which is not 100% tied to this, but your physical connection has dwindled, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there's the touched out partner, and then the touch deprived partner.
Yeah. Go ahead, dude.
Well, I think for our relationship too, this is one of the reasons I really like this, because I think most commonly, people do think of like the person who wants touch is the dad who's not getting any.
Yeah, like in mixed gendered couples, certainly. Yeah.
But for us, I've always been the high touch partner. Always. If I'm sad, I want like a hand on my shoulder. If I'm excited, let's hug. Always. And then we had little tiny humans, and I did not want any of those things. And Steven's like, I honestly don't know how to comfort you. I don't know how to celebrate with you. Like, I don't know what you want. And also, me too. Like, me either. I don't know what I want, but I don't want that. Like, no, don't touch me when I'm crying. Like, how dare you? Because it's just different. You're relearning your body, you're relearning your emotions, you're relearning what connection does look like, feel like, what comfort means, all those things. But yeah, they're really important conversations to have.
That are important because that can be such a painful, like both partners feel so pained by how the other is responding. One feels so rejected and the other feels so unknown and like
often mischaracterized.
Yeah, and sometimes even violent, like would stop touching, like don't come into my space. And like it can feel really, really painful. But when you kind of work through it and understand a lot of the dynamics that are there, it is a much more like, oh, okay. Like this makes sense. How do we navigate it?
Right.
Again,
back to that, like it's me and you against versus it's coming between us. And feels really personal.
So how are you helping people with that?
With the touch or the...
Yes, because, the one, like I know that I went through it, and I was talking to my best friend about this too. And when her daughter was little, we both went through it, and I think it's just so common. Do you, like, I think there's like a time, like, maybe it's, I think for me, it was about 9 months where I was just like, because I just felt so intense around touch and sex and everything. It's just like wasn't happening because I'm like, I'm in pain still. Like first, like I'm just talking about that, but I'm like, over time your body's going to heal, and maybe just helping your partner understand that. But then you're not even explaining it because you're just like, don't you understand? Like,
Yeah.
I think that there's a really practical, like physiological reality, right? So a partner understanding like all that has gone into birth, all that goes into breastfeeding. If you're breastfeeding, all that goes into postpartum healing and all of those things. But I think really how we talk about it in the book too is partners understanding those deeper stories, which is usually there's a partner who has a story that is telling them you are rejected and unwanted. So the partner who wants touch but can't get it feels rejected and unwanted. And the partner who feels touched out oftentimes feels unknown and unseen and mischaracterized and misunderstood. And really how we help couples through this is we help them explain and explore and describe those stories in more depth so that, again, because there's all kinds of practical things you can do, but if you don't resolve that, like if I'm walking around saying, man, my partner doesn't want me, my partner is just rejects me, or man, my partner doesn't get me, my partner doesn't know me, like that, like there's some behaviors that you can change, but that doesn't change that story. And so partners have to understand some of the deeper stories behind the I'm touched out argument. And that's how we interact with couples all the time. And when couples hear that, the partner who's feeling rejected, usually their partner looks at them and says, I don't want you to feel rejected. Like that's not what I'm saying at all.
In fact, it's literally not about you. Not even a little bit.
Right.
Like
right.
The fact, and I think that that's how this conversation can also start to feel violating to that person who is touched out.
Mm-hmm.
So like the solution then is me touching my partner more. Oh, cool. More things I can give of myself to make them happy. Like absolutely not. Never, ever, ever is that the answer.
And for that rejected partner to understand that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to make you feel violated or unknown or like,
or like you're cold or heartless. It's, and in fact, like, I think that's exactly right. Because again, it's back to like, you can change all these behaviors. So you have a partner who wants more touch. So the simple behavior change would be like, okay, well, hold hands for 2 minutes every day. But that's terrible. If you've ever been in a hug where you know the other person does not want to be hugging
you feel it, or it's just, or like, like obligatory sex. I mean, you want like she like,
worst.
oh my God, it's like just get over it, get this, let's get this over with. Oh my God, like that's not connection.
I feel so wanted.
Would you like if you need to? No, thank you. Said no one. You know, like it's not what we are wanting here. But like, and I think that that's exactly right. Your point being knowing each other and what these things mean, because a lot of times we hide that. No one wants to say I feel really unwanted by you, and I think the example of the touched out specifically is one of my favorite case examples we use in that story because it feels really vulnerable. This partner tries so hard not to take it personally. Like, I want to be supportive to my partner, so of course I'm not going to ask for that.
I know. And then like she's sitting on the couch watching, right? And he and sometimes she doesn't even want him to sit. She doesn't want him to sit next to her. So and so he's like sitting on the opposite side, going like, oh, like you could see it play out.
You totally.
To me, it's just like kind of painful to think
brutal.
about.
It's exactly right. Oh, it really is. Yes. And I really like the progression that those two have in this story because he's able to say like, I don't want to ask something of you. So what he takes that to mean then is that he's not allowed to share his experience. And that's not true. We can let our partner know I'm feeling rejected without saying, so you're rejecting me and you have to touch me more.
Right.
I'm
feeling rejected.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is really hard. And
like, it could be like, I really miss you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there is like just getting down to the emotion where it's just like, this is how I'm feeling.
Yes. Right. That's exactly right.
And it's hurting.
Yeah.
You know?
And I don't know where to go with it.
Right.
And I'm trying not to put it on you because that's not fair to put our feelings on our partner. But not sharing them isn't kind either. It leads to all sorts of miscommunication and misinterpretations. And no one wants to feel like when you sit down by your partner on the couch and you kind of like feel them scoot just a little or like steal up in their body, like, cool.
Right.
It's terrible.
And I think one of the things we really try to provide, because it's so hard, like a relationship is a process, right? And a process is really hard to like tease out and to formulate, do this first step, do this second step, do this third step. And oftentimes it's really hard to find the language to describe your experience and then the language to engage with it. And so really, I mean, one of the things that we really wanted to do and have tried to do in the book is, first of all, to describe the experience in a way that feels like it connects to the experiences that people have, but then also to give them a language, give them a script.
Yes.
Like, they don't have to use the same words,
a script,
but at least like it's like an outline. It's a prompt.
Yep.
A sense
And
of like,
you know what? And I really like that, Stephen and Erin. There's no shame in this. Okay, like we're struggling right now. We're having issues. I just picked up this book. It's called Too Tired to Fight.
Yeah.
This is the script under I'm All Touched Out.
Yeah.
And I just want to read this. And I know this sounds awkward and weird, but it's like, I love you and this is important. What do you think? Like, I mean, honestly, like, why not?
Yes.
Like, what do you have to lose at that point? You're like,
nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're struggling.
Also, I was focusing a lot on the partner who feels the partner bristle. But you know what feels terrible too? Is bristling. When Stephen walks into a room and my body's like, oh.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good. And it's like, how do we get back from that? And does that mean I don't love Stephen anymore? Am I not attracted to him? Do I like what does this mean? And we start to get in a really dark headspace about it must be something bad.
And that like you made a good point. I think like that person, that woman, let's say, you know, an example,
Sure.
she must be like, you know, feeling like these are not right. This isn't a right feeling to feel towards my husband that I love very much. But I'm like, I really don't want him to touch me. Like, get away.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, so you're feeling shame, self-judgment, like something's wrong with our relationship. Like you could just imagine.
Totally. Yeah. And you can't possibly imagine feeling something else. Like, how does this sort of yucky feeling go away?
And Robin, to your point, like we talk to couples about this all the time, and because we talk about like, how could you say this, or if you say it this way, or maybe start the conversation this way, and we say, look, it's going to be clunky.
Yeah.
It's not going to be smooth and sexy and like you see on TV or in the movies or hear people talk. Like, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be like, I have a feeling and I need to talk to you about it, and I don't know how, but let's give it a try. Like, and that's fine, because again, we are learning, we are developing skills, we are practicing something. And actually, what feels really good as a couple is to work hard together towards something. And all the awkwardness and silliness and beauty, of doing that. And I think that this is clunky. So do that together.
Something you also you talk about in the book and on your in Instagram and through videos. I really like this. There's a good example in the book around, if there's a default parent.
Yep.
And, you want the other person coming in. It doesn't even have to be the default parent. Let's just say, like your partner is saying, tell me what to do. How can I help you?
Yes.
This is really funny because I was talking about this a few weeks ago. Like, one of my really good friends, she's a nurse and she helps me with my son. And she said, like, very often her husband will come in the room. There's like laundry piled on the couch. She's at the kitchen, she's doing dishes or she's making food, and there's dishes in the sink. And he says, what can I do? And she's like, what the F? Like, this is like, and she just throws her hands up in the air and just is like nothing. Like at that point, and they've been together a long time. So you can see this, right? This is a dynamic that's very common. And I really like it how you're like, you're not here to be the helper. Mm-hmm. You're here to be the parent, the partner.
The partner.
Right?
Yeah.
And so do not ask your partner who is doing what you do to help. Take a look around.
Yeah.
And just take initiative and be that person. It's just like, like you said, like, I'm going to cook dinner 3 days a week. I'm going to you're laying out the things you are going to do to support your partner rather than asking them for help on what you can do, because you're giving them another job.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Our sort of go-to personal example on this is we, during COVID specifically, but even still now, one of our like really happy places is getting our groceries delivered.
Yes, I know. I love
it's a beautiful thing, and we don't always do it, but man, sometimes it's just like, this week we're gonna do this.
There's no shame in that, you guys.
Yeah, well, but so they come, and it happened probably a few weeks in a row where Stephen would be like, hey, what do you want me to do? Say, like, with the chicken, like, hey, what's your plan for the chicken? Like, is this freezer? Is this deep freeze? Like, where? And I'm like, in what world is what to do with the chicken my responsibility? Like, how is the chicken my job? And I would be like, you're assuming I have our meals mapped out, like, because that is not how we do. I mean,
Right.
it would be delightful if we were the kind of people who had our monthly meals mapped out. But like, I don't know what's your plan for the chicken, Stephen. And it became this sort of running joke. And honestly, now it actually is very funny because we have resolved this. But Stephen will be like, hey, what's your plan for whatever?
I'm always like, hey, what should I do with this ground beef? Should I?
With groceries. And I'm like, ha ha ha.
But it communicated to me, even in terms of when we do think about dinner, oftentimes now I don't come up to Erin and say, hey, what's the plan for dinner? I'm entirely capable of cooking a meal. I can do that, And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll come up and say like, hey, I'm just wondering if you had a dinner plan, because if you don't, I have one. I can make one, but I'm just trying to verify that we're not like both working here doing the same thing, or coming through and saying like, hey, I've got dinner planned. And it really did shift my mindset about like how we divide things up in the house, and what are my expectations of, why do I need to say like, hey, is the laundry done yet? Like, go check and see if the laundry's done. If it's not, go get it. Does it need to be folded? Fold it. Like, it's that proactive kind of like, I can have some agency here too, and not dump that on my partner.
I'm thinking of your friend and her husband who walks in and says like, what do I do? And like, when the conversation has been had so many times where it's not productive, it's tiresome. And of course the answer is nothing, like, never mind. But that will always lead in just a little bit of resentment. Like,
yes.
But the flip side of that, because honestly, and I think like, even if you were to like ask both of them like their side of the story, not that it has to be that contentious, but typically, most often, in fact, the partner who's asking really is trying not to step on toes. Truly, like, if we and that's if the best assumed.
Because the flip we hear of that oftentimes is, well, if I just jumped in and started doing stuff, I wouldn't fold the towels right, or
you wouldn't do it the right way.
I wouldn't, and then you would come back and tell me I didn't do it right. So you know what? Like, what? And that is, both of those are valid. But that then doesn't mean don't do anything.
Yeah, the solution to that cannot be disengage and you handle everything, and or disengage and I'll handle everything. That's not connection. So I think, the sort of like, at least give it a try solution to that is like, hey, I was thinking of starting on the dishes. Does that sound like what you had in mind? And that's similar to what Stephen was saying about like, this is what I was thinking, because maybe,
or this is my plan.
Yeah.
This is the action that I am ready to do right now. Like, and you don't have to be responsible for anything that happens.
Beginning to end all the way. Yeah,
this is my action. I just need to know if that action is in line with where you're at.
Yeah. And this comes back to early parenting, but like, Stephen would walk in the door and would so often, like, the first thing he would do is like think to take our kid. I'm like, I don't want you to take our kid to give me time, because now that means I'm the one who's walking around our house and making sure the diapers are started and like, no, like, you don't get to do the fun thing. Like, we have to agree on like what help is actually helping, and if it's not, we have to renegotiate. Because I think a lot of times we assume we know what help is, but I don't want help so I can go do more laundry. No, thank you. Like, I'm very good on that.
We're equitable partners in the business venture here, if you want to use business terms. And then it's like, how do we want to divide the responsibilities that we are both, we both need to be fulfilling? Not like, you're the CEO, just let me know what I can do.
Oh, goodness, no. Like, I am not your parent. I am not you're not my employee. Right. Yeah. It's like, we're partners here. I think, it was just great. So I loved your book. I hope that all parents that are struggling in any, like, I just think if you're co-parenting, you probably are like going through some of this stuff, and we can all learn new skills to be better, like, so that we can have better relationships, especially with our intimate partner.
Absolutely. So, I don't think we can ever have too many, right? Like, just tools in our pocket.
And that's the goal. This is such a beautiful part of life.
Yeah.
Having kids and being parents, if we're privileged enough to be able to do that. and
or choose to.
And so much, or choose to, and so much of like the language even out there is like, oh, get ready for things just to get, oh, terrible, well, all right, say goodbye to this part of it. And it's like, no, how do you thrive and engage in this beautiful time where you can experience love and connection on such deep levels? Like, what do you need to do? What skills do you need to develop? How can you be intentional in a way that this new context asks you to be, just like any new context would ask you to learn skills or be intentional?
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I loved it.
Great
I loved our conversation. I learned a lot. I always do. This is the best part of my job, really. Yeah. So I'm going to close with a blessing, and it's based on your sentiments from the book. So may we remember, having conflict and disagreements between parents is not only normal, but it's necessary. Yeah. Conflict done well and skillfully offers an opportunity for connection. We've been talking about that today. May we understand the intention of conflict is a movement toward genuine mutual understanding and repair. And may we be intent on remaining close with our partners, even in the midst of the chaos of parenting moments, knowing that we are ultimately on the same team. For sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Erin and Stephen.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Let's Talk Love is brought to you by Real Love Ready and hosted by Robin Ducharme. If you'd like to keep learning with us, visit realloveready.com for more resources and tools to boost your relational skills and get better at love. If this podcast has resonated with you, it would mean the world to us if you could take just 30 seconds to do these 3 things. Follow or subscribe. Never miss an episode by hitting the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite app. This makes sure new episodes show up automatically for you, and it helps us get more visibility so more people can find our show. Leave a rating and review. Your feedback means everything to us. By leaving a 5-star rating and a thoughtful review, you're not only showing your support, but also helping others discover the podcast. Share an episode that really spoke to you with someone in your life, whether it's a friend, partner, or family member. Your recommendation could just be what they need to hear. We at Real Love Ready acknowledge and express gratitude for the Coast Salish people, the stewards of the land on which we work and play, and encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge and express gratitude for those that have stewarded and continue to steward the land that you live on as well. Many blessings and much love.